Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the podcast Enterprise. Its only mission to explore story structures, to analyze our favorite characters and plot lines, to boldly talk about what everyone has seen before. Hello and welcome everyone to the podcast Enterprise. We are entering season 2 where we take up Star Trek the original series episodes and dissect it part by part, dialogue by dialogue, character by character, and analyze it for you. I am Bala Ramadurai, and with me I have my co-host Parvati Ramkumar. Say hello, Parvati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Podcast Enterprise. I'm so excited to have you here for season 2.
Yes, season 2. This is when one of the first things I noticed about season 2 is DeForest Kelly is on the opening title credits. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Big change because he's a big character in this. I mean, he was already a good character to begin with, and here he is definitely playing prominent roles.
Absolutely. So shows his popularity, which is awesome.
Let's get into the synopsis of Amok Time. That's the episode that we're going to analyze this time. Season 2, episode 1. Amok Time.
When this episode opens, what we find is that Dr. McCoy is very worried about Spock, and he tells Kirk that there's something seriously wrong with Spock. He's not eating properly, he's irritable, and he's almost nervous, to use the doctor's words. And there's something wrong, and nobody can figure out what it is. And Kirk and Dr. McCoy actually witness Nurse Christine Chapel taking some soup for Spock, and Spock throwing it out with some choice abuse for Nurse Chapel. Now, Spock has his pride, and he's not going to tell Kirk what the issue is, but he does tell Kirk that he wants to go to Vulcan, and there is something on Vulcan, his home planet, that will cure him, but he absolutely refuses to tell Kirk what it is. The Enterprise already is en route to a planet called Altair VI, and this is for some sort of ceremonial event that's happening there. And Starfleet Command has insisted that the Enterprise go there. They cannot change course, but Spock insists that they change course. Over the course of time, he also manages to convince the bridge that the captain has given orders to change course to Vulcan. And there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of humor there. But then Kirk finally confronts Spock and demands, orders him to tell him what is wrong with him. And the issue is there's some sort of a mating season for Vulcans, and Spock is in the throes of it and he can't control it. He must go down, he must get back to Vulcan and have a marriage ceremony held. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of problems. And his wife, or the woman that's supposed to be bonded to him, is called Tipring. Nobody else knew that. So finally, Kirk, with a lot of thought, he decides to go to Vulcan, and there's this elaborate ceremony for Spock, and the marriage ceremony has to take place. But this woman, Tipring, she's pretty devious. She decides that she doesn't want to accept Spock directly. She wants a champion in his place, and she chooses Kirk, of all people. So now Kirk and Spock have to fight each other to the death. Spock is completely out of his mind with all of his emotions taking over. Kirk doesn't know what to do exactly. For one thing, it's very hot on Vulcan, and for the other, it's the atmosphere is so thin that he can't breathe, and he's losing this fight. So McCoy injects him with something. Kirk is knocked out, and it looks as though Spock is won. And then T'Pring reveals a bombshell that she never wanted to marry Spock in the first place. There's another Vulcan that she wants to marry, and she devised all this nonsense so that Spock releases her basically, or even if he doesn't release her, she can have an affair with this other guy. So Spock decides not to marry her. They get back to the Enterprise. He's in temporary command of the Enterprise, but he doesn't want temporary command because he believes he's killed Kirk. And then what happens is, we'll discuss this in detail, but what happens is Kirk is not dead. Spock is very happy. He shows emotion for the first time for about half a second. And yeah, everything is back to normal by then, because now whatever was bothering Spock is gone with the fight and everything. Kirk is alive and all is well. And back to you, Bala. We'll discuss this in detail.
The four-act structure is also in this episode. We start with a teaser where we see the Vulcan soup being thrown onto the wall of the ship. And that's when we know that things are really wrong. The teaser basically shows Spock really angry because all through season one, he's never showed any emotions. So we know that this is very uncharacteristic. So we wonder why. Because Spock also asks, requests Kirk that they go to Vulcan absence. First act essentially highlights, magnifies this problem of him wanting to go to Vulcan. So it's all back and forth, right? So they first go to Vulcan, and then they decided not to go to Vulcan because there is an emergency, or some function that they had to go to has been preponed, or some such things. Those things happen, keep going back and forth. Dr. McCoy at the end of first act reveals that Spock may die because of some reason, some medical reason, and Kirk is totally taken aback that Spock is going to die. It's not a good thing for the Enterprise. So the second act starts off with the fact that now we know why Spock is going to die, because there's massive amounts of adrenaline being pumped into his blood. But Spock is not going to reveal what's wrong with him and why such a thing is happening. So Kirk takes it upon himself and tries to find this out. And we'll discuss this in a rather comical way. They find out, and at the end of second act, they are indeed going towards Vulcan, and the lady who greets them towards Vulcan happens to be his wife. So in between, there's also this relationship between Nurse Chapel and Spock. So there's something going on there. Also, revelations happen in second act like that. In third act, they transport to the surface of the planet Vulcan. Already we see it's a red hot planet, and Kirk and McCoy are very uncomfortable there. So that's what they show. It sort of looks like Stonehenge, I don't know, for some reason. So they show the third act primarily on Vulcan and all the customs and rituals, and there are a whole bunch of things going on. There are jingly bells and all sorts of crazy things they show. The music is weird. All that happens, and then at the end of it, Kirk gets to know that he's been challenged to a duel against Spock, and then we get to know that he has to fight till one of them is dead, either Kirk or Spock. And that was something that he didn't know about when he was signing up for this duel. Apparently, he had a choice, but he didn't know. So we end third act with the grim reality that one of them could be dead at the end of this. So fourth act starts off with Kirk versus Spock fight. This is the fist fights of all. If you thought there are a few fist fights in Star Trek, this is the mother of them all. So this is like Kirk and Spock battling against each other so that one of them may die. So
Hmm.
it's a pretty grim fight, and it goes on for some time with an entertaining list of weapons, and McCoy intervening, and this lady, she also keeps interfering and commentating and all that thing. Those things happen, and finally, of course, we see that Kirk is quote unquote dead. He's not going to die because we need him for the next episode. So he's going to come back. And at the end, he comes back, and the light moment at the end of Star Trek episode is restored. The last dialogue that Kirk says is, "Let's go mind the store." So that's how the fourth act ends, and pretty cool. I thought it's a great episode, exploring Spock's character, and I think this music, this fight has been parodied big time. I remember seeing at least a couple of episodes on Saturday Night Live and all that. So it's one of those episodes which have been parodied to wits end. It's one of those episodes. What did you think about Amok Time?
So there were a lot of emotions running through this one, mostly amusement, because I really enjoyed seeing how serious, scientific, unemotional Spock going through this, and he's struggling so much, and he knows all of this is illogical, and he's trying to keep himself sane and calm, and nothing works because his own body is fighting against him. And Yeah, and I think poor Nurse Chapel, she tries this and she tries that, and she makes all that soup for him, and he throws it out. And
He's gone without food for 3 days, the
yes,
doctor says. And I don't know if it is his favorite soup, or maybe his favorite soup,
yeah,
because Nurse Chapel seems to know that
yeah,
plomic, I found from Memory Alpha, plomic
yeah,
soup,
plum soup.
and that gets thrown out on that. So we see, till then we only hear the doctor's report, but when we see it firsthand, it's like, oh boy, Spock is really in trouble. Him throwing a bowl of soup like that, wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That was
And
really
him
nice.
raising his voice and yelling, and he's just so embarrassed about this. He doesn't want to talk about it, and Kirk tries to order him to say stuff, and he doesn't want to reveal what it is, and he's driving everybody else also bonkers with his behavior, and telling the ship to change course, and then
Hmm.
pretending that he did not know or he does not remember telling them to change course.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, that was pretty entertaining. I mean,
yeah,
he comes like, oh, if you say so, I think it may be right.
yeah.
Like, oh boy, that doesn't sound like Spock at all, not one
At
bit.
all. Maybe I did it, maybe I didn't. I am not going to talk to you.
Yeah,
Mm, it's
this Spock is totally the center of all attention and mockery, and everybody's like, "What do I do with this guy?" And then suddenly McCoy hits Kirk with the fact that, "Oh, what Spock may even die because of this." They're like,
yeah.
"What? Throwing a soup on a wall is one thing, but dying? Wow, this
No,
is unbelievable. What's going on here?"
I think maybe him holding it back so much and trying not to talk about it makes him even more stressed than he would have been normally. And because of all that, that the adrenaline is so high, he can't take it. His body can't take it. And
Right.
he's driving himself to a corner by not being able to express himself, and then trying to control these emotions and whatever's happening to him. He's trying to control it, and he can't do it because it goes against Vulcan biology, and he's in a real mess.
They try to show that by his whatever he's holding in his hands, right? His hands are shivering. Is one of those stylus pens. He's
Yeah.
holding it as if he's holding a dagger and he's going to
Yes.
attack somebody, maybe even the captain. We don't know. So it's all completely opposite contra what we know of Spock and how he behaves in a totally weird sort of way. He's yelling, he's screaming, he's throwing things, or he's not attending to his duty, is flouting regulations at the drop of a hat, and it's crazy time. Really, Amok time is more like crazy time there.
I also found it very interesting that when they do get to Vulcan, Spock is the only one with so much distress. All the other Vulcans are completely calm, including Ring and what's his name? Stone? Stone?
Stan, DCS,
Yeah.
our friend the DCS Stan. We'll have a complete section devoted to DCS the Stan.
Yes, we must.
We'll get to
Yeah.
him soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. With all this center talk about Vulcan biology and this being the most important time for Vulcans,
Hmm.
all of them seem to be like in a regular marriage procession. They're bringing those jingly bells, they're watching the fight, and suddenly they're thrusting their weapon in front of somebody's face, and they seem to be okay. Even Tipa was like totally, she was stone like, but that is expected of Vulcans.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what the hoopla is all about. Why is he the only one who's like this?
That's probably extra embarrassing for him because he's supposed to be this living statue and he's the only one here having a meltdown and everybody else is calm, including the humans. And how embarrassing is that?
Tipa over there stands and says, "Oh, you're bringing outworlders.
Yeah,
You're doing this. You're reacting like this. You're behaving almost like a human being." I mean, she's just insulting him, right?
she's insulting him, stony face. She's insulting him and making some very tough remarks.
In the
Yeah.
first act, that this whole Starfleet thing was, I know you want these conflicts thrown in there
Yeah.
because you want to go to Vulcan, but on the other hand, you want your best starship to attend this place because there are
Mm.
Klingons who are going to be there, and we have to show us solidarity and all
Yeah.
that. It sounds so fake to me. I mean, so,
It did.
and for the sake of bringing a conflict, you're bringing in some ceremonial nonsense. I remember there are two other places where I felt they were really annoying. Was this, what is his name? Commodore Fox, is it? The
Yeah,
guy in MNER 7. So he was
MNER 7, yeah.
really annoying because he really wanted diplomacy over being a soldier. That was
Exactly.
conflicting, that was annoying, that was genuine. And the other place was this 7, where I forget that guy's name. He's also some Commodore something.
Ah, yes, yes. There was somebody there. Yes.
That guy, so he said I have to take my medical supplies. That sounds serious. Okay, got
Yeah.
medical supplies versus investigating a scientific phenomena. Well, that's a big conflict, I understand.
Yes.
But here, show of strength versus, yeah, but Vulcan, somebody going there, I don't know, it didn't sound like a real conflict to me. It
The
sort of fell
problem
flat for me.
is
Yeah.
true. We never understood the gravity of the situation here. You're told basically that the Enterprise must go to this other Altair
Hmm.
6,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
what is the need for it to go there? Okay, you're told, but then you never feel the tension. You're just
Hmm.
told in passing. And
Hmm.
it felt so tacked on that you feel that, it, okay, there was this conflict here that if Kirk didn't go there, maybe he'd be court martialed, but you never felt the intensity of the situation. It was all
Correct.
just by the way, something in the background, some background noise, that's about it. And I
Hmm.
really think Spock stole the show. Maybe that's also one reason why you couldn't really relate to whatever was happening on Alta 6. And it just seems so far fetched and too far away.
Yeah,
So,
perhaps a
yeah,
warlike situation, like
yeah,
a Klingon warship there present at a territory which should have belonged to the Federation, and
yeah,
only one starship is reached there, need you to go there and bolster the strength. That
yeah,
makes it more serious.
exactly. Yeah,
Because you need the Enterprise with all its experience and firepower, needs to be there to support the Federation. We get it.
yeah,
But a
exactly.
celebration, show of strength, oh come on, so weak.
Very
That
weak.
that's There are few places where I thought it felt weak. One of them was definitely this one.
I think our
Uh,
friend
yeah.
Commander Core of the Klingons would have made a nice difference here.
Yeah, probably a visual message from him where they intercept and find that core is going to
Yeah,
take over that planet or something like that. Oh, it really.
when serious.
Yeah. Yeah, a pleasant surprise for season 2 is Chekhov's here, is the
Yep.
navigator, but we're not really introduced to Chekhov or anything. You just see that, oh, by the side of Sulu there's a new guy and he starts speaking in this funny accent. Then we know, oh, this probably is Russian, because the name Chekhov
Yeah.
probably brings you to think that, oh yeah, this guy must be Russian. So that's
Yeah.
the thing.
The first thing I noticed, of course, was his hairstyle. I've never seen a hairstyle like that. It's so messy. And doesn't that go against regulations? I kept thinking about that.
Oh yeah, I don't think they have a regulation like you see in the military how everybody is crew cut and all that.
Yeah.
There's the same kind of style.
Yeah.
Here we don't see that in the entire Enterprise. Women are
Coiffed hair and
decked
everything.
decked out
Yeah, yeah.
differently, and they have a uniform. Yes,
Yeah.
that's one thing.
True,
But
true.
yeah, you're right. The hairstylist seems to be all different for different people.
I don't know whether it was an attempt to make the actor look younger, but my God, that hairstyle was something.
Yeah, that was good. And then, of course, in during first act, we see that back and forth thing was nice, and the way we get to know of these back and forth is also the exchange between Sulu and Chekhov. I think
Yeah.
that comes in the second act, but still, that was funny. Watching
It was
them.
funny. First we go to Altair and then we change course to Vulcan and then Altair and back to Vulcan and Chekhov's I'm going to get space sick with all of these course alterations.
And he says, I know, but just in case I'm going to lay in a course for Vulcan or something, he
And
says
it
at some
happened.
point. When it happens, Kirk calls up and says, okay, let me guess, Vulcan, right? Oh, and Kirk coolly reacts, oh, is it? You all they laid it out already? Okay, fine, then go on,
That's
get on with it.
yeah, I mean that's when Kirk also it sort of strikes Kirk that he's been hemming and hawing and changing giving orders so many times. That was funny.
but,
I enjoyed
but
that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we shouldn't, but really, Spock throwing out that bowl of soup is really funny. I'm just so sorry. It was a mean thing, but it was so funny. And he wrecked that nice, clean ship wall with this reddish soup. It
Yeah.
was, I don't know, it was
Yeah.
just funny. And him yelling and screaming you. I mean, it's somehow that part of the episode, it sort of built up tension to the
Yeah.
point where everything else just fades away, including that stupid ceremony in Altair on Altair. It just doesn't register.
I like McCoy's stellar performances starts off with saying that you can't get anything out of Spock, that
Yeah.
he's tougher than an Aldebaran shell mouth, he says.
He does say that. It's no use talking to Spock. It's no use. He's not going to tell you anything.
But Kirk, as if on cue, he says, "Okay, I'm going to get it out of him."
That's a
Aldebaran.
challenge. I mean, we can't turn down a challenge.
So this guy says, "Oh, it's a personal thing and it's confidential," and all those things go on. It's almost as if a therapist is talking to her patient or his
Yeah.
patient, and also it's almost like that. And Kirk switches roles. He doesn't play the friend card. He says, "Okay, now from now on, whatever you say is going to be confidential. Let's get this out."
I know. He says, what if I treated this as completely confidential? Would that help? That was
Mm.
exactly the right thing to say to Spock at that point.
Mm. Mm.
And maybe it's his human blood, but I feel that he wanted to tell somebody about it, but
Yes,
all of
yes.
this cultural stuff it was kind of weighing heavily on him. He needed to talk to somebody. At the same time, he didn't want to talk to somebody, but Kirk said the right thing to get him to express himself.
Then he says, "Have you ever wondered how Vulcans choose their mates?" Then Kirk thinks about it, says, "Quite logically, I suppose."
I know.
It's like everything is dictated to logic, so choosing their mate should be logical. So
It
it's
should
like,
also be logical
no.
that and you can actually feel Spock's discomfort here. He doesn't want to talk about this, but he has to talk about it.
Right, you nailed it. That was the conflict that Spock had. That
Mm.
he wanted to open up to somebody so that he
Yeah.
can feel better at the end of it. But
Yes.
he knew that he is violating ritualistic stuff
Yeah.
that he's been told since his birth or he's watched since his birth. It's weighing on him throughout that.
It's also a fact that this bonfire or whatever it is he's going through makes
Mm.
him vulnerable. And it
Mm.
reduces his sense of logic, which makes him appear more human, which is also maybe bothering him a little bit.
Yeah, maybe quite possible. But that's the best part, right? So
Yeah.
it's all built up to this point
Yeah.
where it's a very serious thing. It's confidential.
Yeah.
It's a personal
Mm.
thing. Outworld should not know about it. And he says, "You're like, oh, you mean like birds and bees?" Like they have a mating
Yeah.
time,
I
and we're
love
down. We have
how
trivialized how Vulcans don't choose their mates.
and I really love how they kind of skirted around the issue and managed to get the point across. Let's try and talk about this without talking about it. Let's try use euphemisms and go round and round and round and come to the point.
I've seen this somewhere. I don't know if it is there saying, how did Kirk ever deduce that when he says Vulcan biology or
Yeah.
biology of Vulcan or whatever he says
Yeah.
to reproduction from there? How did he figure that out? Biology could be heart, it could be a brain, it's probably a muscle thing, it's a hormone thing. How did he really bring it down to the reproduction?
Maybe because Spock was also so embarrassed about the whole thing. It can't be anything else. If it's a heart problem, possibly he would have said, yeah, my 900 Vulcan hearts have a problem. But this is really unsettling for him. And maybe, I don't know, maybe for someone like who on the earth, you have a lot of animals that go a little crazy at some times. Maybe it
uh,
reminded him of that. Even a small animal like a cat gets a little crazy at that time. So maybe something
uh,
like that was
Oh,
in
quite
Kirk's head.
possible. Yeah, that's quote unquote logical. Yeah.
Logic. It's quote unquote logic, yes.
Then he says, "Oh, like salmon, they must return to their place of birth." He
Yes.
says. So he says, I had to return home to take a wife or die. Okay, like they're on
Yeah,
the same scale. Or either take a wife or you die.
or you
Okay,
die.
that's
Talk about serious things that the Vulcans have to deal with.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point when we see Spock completely destroy that terminal. It's like
Yeah,
one
he
one
smashes it
squash and it's gone. That thing is
and it's
gone. It
gone.
melts like butter.
He's still in a bad mood. And
Yes.
when Nurse Chapel visits him again, he's lying down. That also shows, I think, that all of these
Yeah.
raging emotions in him exhaust him. Not
Yeah.
able to take it after a point. And you never know. I mean, he is part human. So, what exactly does this do to him? We don't know. Maybe he gets more tired than the average Vulcan does. You never know.
That part when Kirk and McCoy when they're discussing in the sick bay and then decide,
Yeah.
that's when that I like the other idea of Nurse Chapel. We've seen this in the Naked Truth, I think, where
Mhm.
you see that Nurse Chapel has some feelings for Spock, and this is one more episode where we see that she's tried to bat for him by
True.
providing him his favorite soup and all that, and now she is trying to go inform Mr. Spock, saying that, hey, you're going to go to Vulcan, but she doesn't know how to do it. I mean, he's resting because he's tired, and then, but she still wants to go and
Yeah, somehow
tell
get
him that.
this point across to him that they're going to Vulcan. And
Hmm.
the most anticlimactic moment of that particular scene was Spock saying, "Your face is wet."
Yes,
That's
that was quite unnecessary. I thought so too. Yeah, I mean, he knows what crying is. He's not like a robo or anything, right? So that
yeah.
he's not like a Terminator who says, "Oh, you let down water from your eyes. Oh, that's strange."
True.
Come on, your face is wet. Is that the best thing you could tell her?
I know, and you talk about shattering a possibly romantic moment, and
Correct. Yeah.
it was so prosaic and so disappointing. And
Correct.
after all that she does, all he has to say is, "Your face is wet." That's it.
I think they should have just kept it silent. I mean,
Yeah.
just him touching her face would have sufficed. I mean, no
Yeah.
dialogue necessary at that point.
No.
If they could have zoomed in on his hand touching her face like that, that would
Yeah.
have really been the good scene. Yeah,
Would have
that.
been poignant.
Yeah.
I know Vulcans can be quite stupid, but no, not now.
No, because even when that Layla woman comes right on board, he doesn't say
Mm,
such things. I probably think that was DC Fontana. She did that
yes.
penning of dialogues there, so it is appropriate here. I don't think somebody who knew how to write romantic scenes came on board. They just had to write
True.
stuff like your face is wet.
True. I think that
Yeah.
character Layla, she was actually sobbing, and
Hmm.
Spock didn't make any such observation about her.
That would have really taken the wind out of that scene for sure.
For sure. I mean, suppose he had said, "There's a lot of water on your face and you're going to get dehydrated." Can you imagine? It was totally shattered the whole thing into something like that here.
No, in Terminator 2, I think that scene does come that this John O'Connor is crying,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
Terminator has no clue what he's doing, and he
Mm.
says, "Oh, what are you doing?" I mean, this guy say, "Oh, what do you mean? What are you talking about?" And like the water, I mean, water in your face. Like what's that? Then I understand. Terminator, this is a
Yeah, the
robo,
Terminator,
has no,
okay, the
yeah, has
Terminator
no
has some
idea.
true, he has some endearing moments, and he's a robot and all that sort of thing. But what is
This is a Spock. This is half
yeah?
human. He's definitely seen. He himself has cried. Forget
No, he has.
the end of that scene. They cleverly, brought Christine on board. She was on the bridge when they want to reveal that this is my wife. I think that was pretty good. I mean, having if we keep the face wet part of it aside, I think the logical end of that act was the fact that to reveal T'Pring as Spock's wife, one of course
Mm,
was on its own was startling to us because
yeah,
we didn't know the existence of his wife, and in the presence of Nurse Chapel, it was really good.
it was a bit of a shock, and
Hmm.
he says it so flatly. It is T'Pring, and this is his wife. And it's so flat. One extra little tidbit there that I really, really liked, one part there that I liked
Mm,
was the Vulcan Space Command when they respond to the Enterprise asking for permission to assume standard orbit. I really
mm,
like the tone of the
mm.
Vulcan command. It's so robotic, monotonous. I mean, and it sort of summarizes the entire civilization quite well. There's no
Right.
emotion at all. They're so flat. They don't.
Yeah,
They
they're
don't
just
want to
saying
feel anything.
the script, right? The words,
Yeah,
welcome to Vulcan space or whatever. They're just saying it.
yeah, and it's so
And
flat.
we know that they're just saying it because it's written somewhere. Probably
Yeah,
anybody who attains standard orbit, they should tell them that. That's it.
yeah, and say welcome in the most unwelcome way possible.
You're here. I can do nothing about it.
Yeah, and from all of Vulcan, welcome. And you're thinking, really? That's a welcome?
Yeah, how welcome you are to Vulcan when you hear that
Yeah.
phrase.
To a Vulcan, you can stay here or you can go or you can disappear. I don't care.
Yeah, that was good. And third act was all about getting to know about the planet itself, about
True.
how bleak it is, and how, in
Hot
spite
it
of
is.
all the things that you've heard, that they have a science academy and this and that, and suddenly we get to know that there's a ceremonial place which is really,
Mm.
really old. So it sort of modeled after Stonehenge. I think that's the feeling I got when you see those pillars with no roof,
Yeah, there's no
nothing. It's just
support
out there in the
anywhere.
open. Yeah.
True. I also felt that if someone decides to go and stay on Mars, it would be something
Mm.
like this.
The
Mars is also
reddish
cold.
hue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Mars may be cold, but it's still. I got that impression, that red color and the thin atmosphere,
Mm.
and at
Correct.
the same time, it's somewhat Earth-like, but not exactly. It reminded me of that in some way, and something that bothered me a little bit, Bala,
Mm.
about that
Mm.
particular scene where they descend onto Vulcan
Mm.
and attend the ceremony is I'm a little surprised that all of Vulcan has this exact same single cultural event.
Mm.
See, even on Earth, each region has something different. Now, if
Mm.
you're going to say that all of Vulcan has exactly the same culture, that's a little bit unbelievable for me as a viewer, because it seems like Vulcan has a monoculture, which is also a little odd. How
Mm.
can the entire planet be exactly the same? So
Mm.
that sort of thing bothered me a little bit. I would have liked it if they had said something along the lines of this region of Vulcan and the Vulcans living in this region have this culture. It may vary maybe in the other hemisphere, but here this is what is done. Instead of assuming that all of Vulcan has the same thing. Maybe I mean or it would have been nice if they'd said somewhere there may be one Vulcan who shows emotions instead of all of them being completely
Ah.
robotic. Yeah.
Now, interesting, because in many episodes of Star Trek, I've thought about this, one capital city,
Yes.
one head of state. I
Yeah.
wonder, in one planet like ours, there are so many heads of state. It's not like
Yes.
one country and one head of state, but there are
Exactly.
so many, and they're all so different from each other. So, how can you call this person as the head of state for that planet? But
Exactly.
on the other hand, when you have a federation of planets,
Mm,
you probably need one, or you can't have a, just because you have 200 countries, you can't send 200 people for that federation, for
exactly.
a, to
That is
the,
also true. That's
so
also true.
probably
Yeah.
I'm thinking, yeah, culturally, yes, but I think administratively that makes sense.
And
Politically,
yeah. And even politically, if you can select one leader to represent this planet, that makes sense because
hmm,
eventually, when you are faced with an alien threat or when you are face to face with an alien, I think you would need some sort of planet unity. So that is
hmm,
important, I think. But I still, like you also said, culturally, I do wish they'd shown some sort of diversity or some sort of cultural differences between different parts of Vulcan. That would
hmm,
have made a lot of sense because there's no way that so many people scattered across what I assume is a big planet would have exactly the same culture. Now,
hmm,
it's also a fact that this particular area of Vulcan is red and the terrain is very harsh, and you have these buildings on top of what look like cliffs. But all of Vulcan may not be like that. So,
hmm,
why would Why would a Vulcan living in another part of the planet have exactly the same ceremonies as this particular group? That I just kept thinking about that throughout.
Then McCoy also says, hot
Yeah.
as Vulcan. Now I know what it really means.
What
So
it really means. They're
apparently,
burning up.
apparently there is an expression like that.
Hot as
And then
Vulcan, yes.
finally they bring in the phrase, our favorite phrase, the Kunat Khalifi. That's
I
something I couldn't get over.
I am so sorry. The first time I saw coconut, my mind registered it as coconut. I am so sorry. It was just, and I kept, each time they said coconut, my mind kept repeating that as coconut, and I was so confused.
Kunat Khalifi, and they have different variations of that, right? So
Yeah.
this guy says iffy, and she says ifa, or something like that, right? So it's the opposite of that. No, I don't want you. I want you. He says ifa, and she says iffy, and everybody like, and Kirk is like, what did she say?
I think, Bala, one of the problems with these words on Vulcan is that they seemed like they were just made up. And
Hmm.
it I didn't get the sense of much logic behind the creation of those words, except okay, Tipring and Tipa, okay, fine, the females have this T to their names, that's fine. But otherwise, it just seemed like a random putting together of consonants and vowels. I think that was the problem.
No, just to give a alien like feeling. I think that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was a little
when
too alien.
when I first heard it, I thought it was
Yeah.
like in Germany or in Netherlands they use VER, VON, DE. These are few things that are used for names. So I assumed it was like that. I thought it was Dupreen or something like that. I then when I looked it up, Tipau. I sort of thought it's TIPAU. So then I looked up and I said, "Hey, there's an apostrophe after." It's like, okay, so this is different, and
True.
in
Except for the two female names that had some sort of a cadence to them, the
Hmm.
other words, unfortunately for me, seemed a little, I don't know, they didn't have much of a structure to them. That's probably why I had a little trouble following them. I couldn't even remember them.
I like the whole marriage procession thing with the jingly bells and
Bells.
everything. They're awesome. They're
And
like
I
a
could have sworn they were wearing Romulan helmets, weren't they? I'm pretty
yeah,
sure they were
yeah,
wearing.
yeah.
It looked like that.
Our Stan guy was this DCS, right? So he was the
Yeah.
same guy who acted as DCS. So they just removed his helmet, and now he's Stan.
Or Ston, or Stan, or Ston,
Stan
or
or
yes.
Stan, or I don't know what the Stan is it. I
Stan,
heard
yeah, I
down as
think he was
Stan.
Ston. Yeah, yeah.
Stan. Okay, I didn't look it up there. Okay, so this guy, so Kirk looks at, points at him and says, this guy is going to be the challenger." Oh, really? Do you think Spock can take him on? Maybe, yeah.
I mean, I also like that Kirk and McCoy kept turning around and staring at Ston, and he's looking back at them.
Yes.
Aliens staring at each
So,
other, trying to
Stan
figure
was
out what the other is
quite,
thinking.
quite a character, Stan.
Yeah, he shows very little, and he's up to no good though.
Correct. No, no, I think the Tiprine's whole divisive, whatever strategy she had, nobody knows what's going on, right? So
Yeah.
Stan was taken aback, Spock was taken aback. I don't think even Tipau saw what was going on. They're like, okay, I'm an arbitrator here. I'm just going to follow the 2,000-year-old ritual, and that's about it.
That's
That's my
about it.
role here. I'm just going to focus on that because it's
True.
she's too manipulative. She's thinking of three or four scenarios, and all of it she wants to have the advantage here. That's
True.
her
To
main
bring, right?
goal. And yeah,
Yeah.
the Tiprine's whole goal in this seems to be that.
She actually didn't really consider what might happen had Kirk won and he had claimed her. What would
Hmm.
she have done? She would have gone to the Enterprise, and then what? There's no Storm there, and then what? She,
No, I'm sure she would have come up with some other strategy. Forced
she
him in this thin air, and then I don't know, maybe strangle him. I don't know what.
maybe they're very strong. So yeah, you never know what she would have done. She's very manipulative, very. When Spock tries to talk to her and he asks her to explain what she's been doing, and all
Hmm.
she says is specify. That's it.
Which of my schemes do you want to know about? I
Yes,
have like
please
five different
specify.
schemes going on at the same time.
So please elaborate and I will tell you.
Please specify. I have already knocked Tipa out of her power. She doesn't
Yep.
even know about it. She thinks she's in control. I'm the one who's doing all this.
Yeah. She's actually a very impressive character. She doesn't show anything and she's scheming and she's manipulative and she's taking everybody by surprise. I think Storm is going to face hell.
She had the whole thing planned to the T.
Yes,
I'm sure. If
absolutely.
not for McCoy's intervention, she would have really. She's probably taken over the Enterprise also. Who knows? I wonder why they didn't develop her character more and
I
probably
know, very
taken.
impressive.
Yeah, completely.
Very, very impressive. And I think Storm, that's the end of him. He's never going to make it out of here.
It's like Spock is like, man, best,
Yeah,
good luck to you controlling this woman.
yeah. He,
Wanting all that philosophy put on him, but I don't think he had that in mind. He said, "Oh boy, watch out, dude! This Tiprin is not your type. You're gonna be
yeah.
dealt with well."
He actually reminded of, do you know that character Moose in the Archie comics? This guy actually reminded me of the Vulcan equivalent of a moose. It's totally empty. So he's got a lot of muscles and a lot of strength, and he's going to get manipulated out of his life by this tip ring. I don't think he's very smart somehow.
Hey, he does the same thing when he's a Romulan also. No? This
Yeah,
character, Decius is not thinking. He just sends a message. He breaks radio silence. He challenges his commander. He wonders
yeah,
why the Earth people are winning. So
yeah, yeah.
same
No, he,
story.
and he's hopeless as a Romulan and he's hopeless as a Vulcan. So there's completely no
There's
hope for him. And
little
now I know,
conflict.
I think, Spock also realized that by the end, and he said wanting is not the same as having. So now he has her. It's up to him now.
You're not gonna want what you have now,
Yeah.
boy.
And you're not going to get rid of her now because you have her. Yeah. So yes,
Then
that was entertaining.
that's when Tipao springs the lerpa. She said the
Yeah,
lerpa.
yes. Let's
She
add
says
some
it.
more Vulcan names to confuse the hell out of us, really.
And there was one thing, no, what is that?
There was a axe like, what was it?
She says there's those
Huh.
rope thingies. I don't know what they're
Yeah,
called.
yeah, yeah.
Did you get the
The
name of that? I couldn't find it in Memory Alpha.
no, I didn't find the name of that. It's something like a whip, wasn't it? And
Yes,
it
yes.
reminds me a little bit of some of the weapons that they use in Kalaripayattu because, like the Urumi, it's
Hmm.
a sort of like a serpent sword, a water sword. It
Oh
shimmers
yeah.
and it moves like a snake. This particular weapon that the Vulcans use is more of a whip. It still
Hmm.
reminded me of that dangerous thing.
I've seen that. It's very difficult to hold it in your hand.
It's also terrifying how quickly Spock used that to bring down Kirk, and it wraps around his neck, I think, and he was pulling at it.
Hmm.
And yeah, that was a painful scene.
Yeah. No, another thing I noticed was that Spock got his kamarband, the purple one, but
Hmm.
Kirk didn't get any. He's the
Yeah,
challenger. He
yeah.
should have got one too, but he never got one.
It
Right?
was
I don't know if
actually
that
quite
makes a difference.
funny that Kirk accepted the challenge, and then
Hmm.
after he accepts the challenge, he realizes that it's a fight to the death, and
Hmm.
all the blood drains from his face, and
Yeah,
he should have thought
that
it
was.
through just a little bit, but
At least you asked her on what are the rules of the fight. Can you let me know? I don't think the thin air probably didn't let him think all these.
I know, and he somehow, for some reason, he decided that he wouldn't like listen to McCoy either, and so
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah, he got
he
himself
was bent on sort of playing everything down there. So he's
true,
taking a huge risk because he
huge
has
risk.
no idea what the whole situation is. He doesn't know this
Yeah,
planet, he doesn't know the rituals, nothing. And just says, oh, challenge. Okay, fine, I'll go fight. If I don't like it, I'll probably quit it and then we can all go back home.
yeah,
And
that's
then
simple with an
nobody gets
alien
hurt.
culture. The thin atmosphere was really bugging him.
That was fun. He said, "Yeah, I'll quit it if it gets too much. It goes out of
That's what
hand. It
it
is just our
does.
Spock, and I'll knock a few things down. Maybe
I
pelt
know.
him give him a cross, a jab, or whatever, and then move on."
And I'm amazed that it didn't strike him. See, even when he is completely within his senses,
Right.
Spock is so much stronger than a human male. And now
Yes.
Spock is bordering on insane. He's crazy. Naturally, you would think that his strength is much more now, but that never
Mm.
strikes Kirk.
At the end, when McCoy injects him with a hypo of what he calls triox, but later turns out to be a what? Neural paralyzer, he says.
Yes, a neural paralyzer, yes.
And then he declares him to be finished and
Mm,
dead and all that. That twist was nice. I like
very
that part. And Tipau is not without feelings. He says, "I grieve with thee." I
yeah.
don't know
Oh,
why
she
she
has
says.
a real fancy way of speaking. The
So, "I grieve with thee," she says.
It's so deadpan, you don't know whether she means it or she's just saying it out of some sort of formality.
We don't know if it's like the Vulcan welcome, whether she really means it, like grieve
Yeah.
with thee. I don't know what's up there.
Or it's just out of formality, I agree with thee. That's it.
This is what you're supposed to say, and that's
Yeah,
it.
that's what she said. It's like a good Vulcan.
And this is sort of setting it up. I think McCoy says, "Believe it or not, you are in command. What do you expect me to do?" So because,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
he knows that the captain is not dead.
Yes, true.
So why does he say that then? You're in command. Maybe just to
Because
make believe the Vulcans that Kirk is dead.
he wanted to see how Spock would react and see
Mm,
what kind of integrity this character has now that because Spock believes that he has murdered Kirk.
mm,
So, and McCoy just wants to see, I think, whether Spock feels some sort of guilt for murdering his friend because up to this point he has been saying that Kirk is his friend and that he
mm,
wants both him and McCoy to accompany him to Vulcan.
mm, mm.
So now that he's murdered him, murdered in quotations, probably McCoy just wanted to gauge what Spock's feelings were on the matter. And he didn't let him down actually because he gave orders and he wants to turn himself in. So he did show honor at that point.
Yes, yes. No, the moment Kirk is dead, I think he's just snapped out of that. What is that? Amundara. No, what is that?
Yeah,
Plucked
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah. True,
Whatever it
true.
was.
Whatever that was, he snapped out of it. Yeah, he did.
Uh, he's out of it. That moment is like done. So yeah, then he knows what exactly he's supposed to do as a science officer, as first officer,
True,
and as acting captain.
true,
Um, he
true.
does that.
And he does have guilt.
Hmm.
Doesn't express it as much, but he is guilty. So I
Hmm.
think McCoy wanted to gauge how much of that guilt is he able to express or show. And I
Hmm.
think that's why he said that. I think so. It was some sort of a test.
Yeah. No, that was very well done because that's the conflict there, right? On the one hand, you
Exactly.
have this barbaric culture of his, according to him, the logic is stripped out of them and ripped out of their civilization and all that. And this pure raw emotions is what they have. We are not
Yeah,
very happy about it, but that's what it is
true.
because that's the tradition.
Huh.
But on the other hand, there from Spock's point of view,
True.
and it sums up with his exchange with Tipau saying, "Live long and prosper." He says, "I shall do
Mm,
neither." That was
true,
amazing.
because he has just murdered his friend. And
His friend and his captain.
yeah,
So
and
both ways.
he feels now that he's not going to live much longer and he's not going to be happy and he's not going
Yeah,
to prosper. That is
yeah,
very, very telling and a very hard hitting statement.
really great. And of course, back on the Enterprise, Spock's going on and on and on about what he has to do and all the duty and stuff. McCoy tries to interrupt, he tries to explain. Nope, Spock wouldn't listen.
I think at that point, I also think it was grief showing in
Yeah,
Spock.
yes,
And
yes.
he's just so overwhelmed and he's only this is the only way he knows to express himself that he's
Mm.
going to talk about regulations and in his mind probably turning himself in is akin to ending his life in a way.
Yeah, life
Yeah,
and career. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
for him, the honor and all that is way above his
true.
duty. All that comes first.
Until he saw Kirk again, and he grinned. Oh my god!
Captain Jim says
And
that.
then yeah, and then we're back to our usual composed self, and
Oh,
yeah, I was very pleased to see him.
I'm at a loss to find out what really happened to you. Of course,
Yeah,
I'm delighted.
it was entertaining.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
that half a second of emotion that he showed, that was enough to reveal what he actually thinks it is done so well.
why didn't Starfleet take any action? Why are they pardoned now? Because Tipau said something?
Yeah, that's
What
what they
was.
said. She kind of stepped in and made it seem that it was because of her instructions that the Enterprise stopped on Vulcan. I didn't
Ah,
find that particularly convincing because it came out of nowhere, but it works, I guess. It got them out of a jam.
right. Maybe, yeah, because probably she realized that Kirk took this massive risk on,
Mm,
must have disobeyed an order to get them all to Vulcan for
yeah,
their cultural or whatever their heritage and etc. etc.
true, true.
Because she is impressed with Kirk and McCoy,
She is
saying
in.
he has chosen his friends very well because
Yeah,
they
she
will do
does say
anything
that.
to be here. When they introduce themselves, they don't use ranks or the titles. They just
True.
say Leonard McCoy, and he says, I'm Kirk.
That's
And
it.
not
Yeah.
Captain Kirk, not Dr. McCoy, nothing.
She must have gauged that these men are really good friends and they will stand by each other when the need arises. It was probably very clear to her. And the fact that they are outworlders who risked everything to bring Spock back to Vulcan. So that was impressive, I thought. They're aliens to the Vulcans, and yet they did enough to respect Vulcan culture. So maybe that impressed her.
That was very, very interesting. And
Yeah.
of course, the last quip was amazing in a pig's eye. He says,
He's so annoyed at the best of times with Spock, and it's entertaining.
but Kirk somehow takes the cue and says, okay, Spock, let's go mind the store. He just goes off and says, oh, we're done
Yeah,
with these quips. Let's get back to
let's
duty.
get back to work. We've had enough drama for today. That's enough.
I had to die to get us
I
from this
know.
jam.
And now that's it. I'm done. I'm going back to the bridge.
Okay, so we get to our likes and dislikes. So, what did you
Mm.
like and dislike in this episode, Dee?
I think I liked just about everything. I particularly liked the feelings that Nurse Chapel showed towards Spock and how she was trying to make his favorite soup and show that extra consideration. And I also liked Spock's response. Not as in, I mean, I'm not saying that he behaved well to her, but the fact that he was so distressed that he's not able to see whatever it is for what it is, that was
Hmm.
very interesting. And I also really liked how McCoy took charge here and he kind of got Kirk out of that fight. That was a real
Hmm.
piece of devious thinking to knock
Hmm.
Kirk out with that injection. Because had he not done that, Spock would have killed him for sure. And McCoy
Hmm.
found a way to get Kirk out of that situation while making it appear that he's been killed when he's not actually killed. So I
Hmm.
like those aspects of the episode. And I also liked those little snippets of Vulcan culture that we saw. And I really liked T-Train. So,
Hmm.
and what did I dislike? I'm not sure I disliked anything as such, except maybe they could have shown the situation on Altair a little bit more convincingly. One Klingon would have done the trick. Maybe Commander Core would have done the trick. That's about it.
My likes were Chekhov Sulu exchange. I think
Mm,
that was really nice to set up that character and their camaraderie. And you already talked about Chapel and
yeah.
Spock. That was nice. I totally love, I've talked about in the past as well, Kirk,
Mm,
McCoy, Spock, the trio, trying to solve the problems together that they face. One of many to come. And that too, it's quite strong in the second season. That's really nice.
mm,
The quips, of course, all the lighthearted moments are really nice. It didn't take away the seriousness from certain places. Like it didn't end with a quip. All the seriousness is done, and then
mm,
they had the light moments. So that was very
true.
nicely done. Interesting part that I noticed about Vulcan culture and tradition, in spite of
Mm,
all their logic and stuff, was their
mm,
arranged marriage. So he
yeah.
says, "Oh, when I was a kid, they arranged this whole thing. I didn't even know this." So sort of very interesting take or interesting dimension of the Vulcan tradition that they have.
True.
This arranged
Yeah,
marriage.
I actually thought, no, maybe it is because they're so logical that they opted for the arranged marriage because probably they use logic to pair people off. And
Hmm.
the most logical match for this individual would have been
Hmm.
this individual. And they use sheer logic for that until, of course, this particular whatever takes place. I think probably it's a very logical setup that they choose whoever is matched for each Vulcan. And I think the logic and the lack of emotion is what makes him do that.
Correct. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. So things don't happen by chance, but it
Yeah,
should be arranged and derived in a logical manner. So arranged
true.
marriage actually falls in that bracket. Very
True. And
interesting idea.
Spring, despite her flawless logic, is probably the most human of them all because she is the one who broke the Vulcan tradition and actually chose this guy Strawn. So again, that goes against all logic.
My dislikes, I think there's
Mm.
only, if I can call it a dislike, I think it is
Mm.
more a nitpicking, is this
Mm.
whole Kirk getting to know what Spock is going through that exchange. It is funny on one hand, I like
Yeah.
that part, but this guy is in pain. He could die if unchecked. And here he is talking about bees and birds and making light of it. Seems from an outside perspective, seems as if making light of this, whereas it's a matter of life and death for Spock. On one hand, I'm thinking maybe it's the fact that humans are so human centric that they can't comprehend what aliens go through, and we can't really fathom such things because it's
Yeah.
so contra what we're used to. Maybe that's what this is, but I
Maybe.
don't know. I didn't
I,
quite get that. I thought
yeah.
Kirk should have been more serious about this.
But I also felt that Kirk was trying to be serious, but when he realized that this is what Spock was trying to hide, he was amused. I mean, this the serious and absolutely logical Spock is trying to hide the fact that there are some physical changes happening in him, and maybe, which is maybe I don't know. Kirk just found it funny when he shouldn't have, and he's
Yeah.
trying not to laugh. And it's a very serious situation. For a
Yeah.
Vulcan, this is a life or death situation, but for a human, it's a little difficult to see it in that same perspective.
Our last question to wrap up this episode:
Mm.
if the screenwriter were to appear, what would we ask them to explain or change?
I guess maybe we could explain the monoculture bit a little bit more and explain why all of Vulcan has the same. I'm sorry, vulture. I said vulture. All of Vulcan has the same culture. And I don't know, maybe, like I said before, also, could we explain the situation on Altair a little better, pretty please? That's about all I would like to ask them.
I would definitely ask them, after discussing with you, I would definitely ask them to remove that "your face is wet" dialogue for sure. That's the first thing.
That was,
It was
yeah,
so
yeah,
awkward in that otherwise brilliant scene.
yeah,
It was an awkward dialogue to put in there.
yeah. I
So
mean, it's
that's the only
amazing.
change I would ask.
I mean, it's amazing how one sentence, a singular sentence, can absolutely destroy the atmosphere of the entire thing. Yeah, how not
Yeah.
to write a dialogue.
Yeah, that's what you learned from this. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Parvati, for this intense discussion on Amok time.
Thank you.
This was fun, and yes, so hopefully, listeners, you enjoyed this if you reached this far, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, and bye.
Bye, everyone.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening to the podcast Enterprise. Please do share your reviews with us, and please share this podcast with any of your writing friends or trickies. Live long and prosper.